Thanks so much for joining me today. We are going to dive into the conversation in a moment. First, I wanted to remind you that the show notes and links mentioned on this podcast are on my website at lizacivicmarketing.com. That's Liza with a Z and Civic with an S. So, okay, let's get started. Hey, magicians, thanks for coming back and joining me today. I'm always happy to have you here. And today I'm also happy to have Lori HIghby here from Keystone Click. I said that right. HIghby.
Yep, you're
okay.
good.
And we're really excited to talk about her specialty on her podcast, which is networking, which is such a huge part of marketing. We forget how much relationship building there is in marketing right now. So she's the perfect person to talk about this with me. And I'm really excited to have her here. Hi, Lori. Welcome.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I'm excited to share my networking magic with your audience.
I love when people work that title in my podcast. Thank you. My best guest so far was an actual magician. It was awesome. Oh, look, see, Lori has this amazing talent to make my dog bark. I'm just kidding.
Dogs love me. What can I say?
Dogs love you. Yes, the sound of your voice is just amazing to them and to me. Okay, so we're going to move on. We're going to try to keep the Corgi Duke quiet. We have a whole new way of looking at marketing now. There's a lot more relationship marketing. I liken it back to the Mad Men era, as far as not the scotch in the office and the smoke, but the talking to people, the going out to see them in the offices, et cetera. And we've got to move that to digital, because with the iOS and Google updates that have changed the data opt-ins, a lot of people are opting out. You know, as marketers, we love having those demographics to drill down so specifically and have someone get those for us, and we pay for that privilege to them, like to Facebook, et cetera. But, you know, a lot of people, you've heard this in the news, it's getting out of control. As consumers, even the marketers feel like some of it's too much, and they are changing the way they do things in response to what the consumers are asking for. Therefore, marketers have to change the way we're reacting. So the biggest way to do that is to start building relationships digitally, in groups, one-on-one, and in networking. And after COVID, so much networking moved to online that there's now national networking groups that didn't exist before. Mm-hmm. So Lori, now that I've said all that, what's your take on that? Like, what are you thinking about this same situation?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, people like doing business with people. Mm-hmm. And it's, you know, as much as, and you know, I may contradict some of the things that I'm saying from the state of digital marketing, because that's my world. That I know you have, that's your world too. But it's all about establishing rapport and building trust. And the way you do that is not necessarily through the brand of the entity, but through the personal branding of the individuals. And that's where networking comes into play, is that the only way that you can actually get your name out there is by to connect with other individuals. Someone else has to be advocating for you for your voice to go further than your established network. So you do that by being a resource and providing value and being an advocate for others, and building these relationships where it's you're giving first as opposed to trying to just take away. But I've actually really enjoyed what's happened with the negative thing of COVID, of opening these doors to meeting people on a totally different level. You know, I've connected with individuals globally because of this, and it was a new opportunity for me to create new relationships, and my network has grown significantly, as you mentioned, because there's so many new opportunities right now to connect with people, as opposed to just what's happening in your local community.
So Lori, what is your thoughts on building relationships and digital marketing and being, you know, a handshake business without the handshake, especially now, got to do fist bump?
Yeah, great question. I mean, digital marketing and networking really go hand in hand, and the world of COVID changed things significantly, as you mentioned. It's a lot easier to connect with people on a global basis now, as opposed to just showing up at an event that's at your local community, you know, the chamber outing or whatever that is. It's been fascinating to get on random organizations or just, you know, free for all hey, I'm open to connecting with whoever wants to connect with me, and seeing where that leads you. And some amazing opportunities have actually presented itself over the last year and a half, where I'm now speaking to, different organizations on a national basis because I, stepped outside of my comfort zone and did a random Zoom call with someone that I've never met before. And lo and behold, they are leading an organization that happens to be where my target audience is. So it's all about being you. I mean, there's three rules that I really foster when it comes to networking, whether it's in person or digital. I think all of it, it still is critical. And I'm going to share real quickly. You briefly mentioned my podcast. So I interview professionals globally on the topic of networking. I've got over 300 episodes recorded. So I've interviewed a number of people on this topic. And I've just identified these three rules that basically across the board are so critical to really building relationships that foster trust, where you're getting some sort of advocacy or there's reciprocity happening. The first one is to be you, be authentic, be genuine. I mean, at the end of the day, people can smell fake. That's what I like to say. It's very obvious when someone's not being themselves. And at the end of the day, and I'm sorry, I'm saying that again. I just realized I said that twice. Why wouldn't you want to be yourself? It's more work. It's stressful. It's anxiety inducing. You're trying to be something you're not. And if you are being you, you're going to attract the type of people that you actually are going to enjoy wanting to spend time with and do business with.
Hallelujah. Thank you for saying.
The second thing that is super important is to give first. There's so many situations I've found myself in where someone's trying to just sell me immediately on something, and I'm just instant not interested. And I see this LinkedIn, there's so many people, and I really like, what is your conversion rate or your success rate on? Let's connect on LinkedIn, and here's my sales pitch immediately. I'm immediately not interested in having that conversation. It's like, get to know me. You're asking me to marry you before you even had a conversation with me. So how do you know I have an interest in your needs? Why don't you take the time to say something that's a little bit more about building a relationship? But on that note, you build that relationship so you can identify how can I be a resource and provide value to them before even trying to get them to sign a contract and start doing business with me. The third thing that is so important, and probably the one that I see has the ball dropped the most, is the follow through. If you're going to tell somebody you're going to do something, you have to do it. Because if you don't follow through, you've immediately lost any credibility that you've already built up with that individual. It's as simple as, hey, you know what? I know this person might be a good contact for you. I'm going to make this connection. Well, if you don't make that connection, you've lost that credibility, and that person's not going to trust you to follow through on whatever it is that you may potentially be doing with them from a business standpoint in the future. So be authentic, be you, give first, and follow through are my three rules for networking.
That is a great list, and short, so easy to remember. But they're all like common sense things we should all know, and we probably do, but we don't always do them. So that's put it on a Post-it note and put it above your computer,
Totally.
To remind yourself, don't get too busy. Remember to do that connection you mentioned, write it down, because it's not necessarily that you're not, caring about what you promised. It's just, there's a lot of things going back and forth in these network meetings, and, make those notes because it's easy to forget something you promised, and to whom and why. I'll scribble, John, and then a week later, I'm like, why did I write down John? So make sure you're specific about those notes. So I really liked what you said about the LinkedIn and the immediate sales pitch. That is a huge problem. I mean, LinkedIn has become such an area for spam, and it's built not to be, and they're trying to, make sure that people can't work around it. But, unless you're reporting all these people as I don't know them, and I'm not looking to do that to people just trying to make money in the world. You're just going to keep getting them. And it's funny because, as you said, there's been a lot of pushback, and I don't know what their conversion rate is. It's got to be just, I was so persistent, I eventually got a call. But then what? Are you getting any sales? Oh, I don't know. But they try to start this relationship now with, hey, how you doing? I saw your last podcast, or I saw these are a lot of great articles. And it's the same thing that spammers say to you on Instagram. It's like, dude, that is not the way to go about it. And then the minute you connect with them, or the minute you say, oh yeah, I'll talk to you about something, boom, sales pitch. It's like, oh man, you tricked me into this blind date. Yeah.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's a good way to position it. Blind date.
Yeah.
I like that.
It's like, I swiped on Tinder because I thought you wanted to be a friend. So yeah, it's I guess that's not what Tinder's brought on to me. But yeah, I guess that's going to continue to be a problem until they get it. Somebody is telling these people, this is the way to do it. This is how I made $1 million. And they're going to continue doing it until somebody like Lori tells them not to. So, we talked a little bit about networking and building the relationship and being a resource. I mean, when you're going to sell digitally, especially social selling, it's relationship value, and then sell. It's not just out of the gate, here's my special.
Yeah. And I don't even call it, I mean, really it's called social media, and it's not social selling. It's not sell me media, it's social. We're building a relationship. The type of content that you should be publishing is value add content. And I'm going to focus on LinkedIn because that's really the business platform, right? Just to share some insights there. And the way that you really need to be thinking about this is the information that I'm publishing going to help my audience be better and do better in their job and in their role in their life? If it's not going to be valuable. And the idea too, and this is what's really fascinating, if you practice this approach and add value to your network, it actually changes the sales conversation that you have when someone is ready to buy. Because you've already gone through the establishment of trust. You've already proven your expertise. You don't even have to do any sort of like discovery to try to sell your offering. You've done that by providing information and being a resource to your network that they just call you when they are ready, because you've already gone through that customer journey process with them. And they're just like, okay, let's go. The sales conversation changes.
Yes. And then those same 3 bullet points that you gave apply to every transaction you have with them, whether it's social or, an actual e-commerce or commercial transaction. It's got to be the follow through. It's got to be bring a resource, be a resource. You want to be the expert they turn to and they tell all their friends about in the same industry.
Totally.
So you just keep doing those 3 bullet points over and over again. And Lori promises you'll be a millionaire and you can start emailing everybody on LinkedIn how great you are and have you just bought a Ferrari. So, and by the way, all those pictures they have of them sitting in front of a sports car, it's all their dealerships or somebody they saw outside a club. It's not their car. So I just like to call those guys out sometimes. And girls, I've seen them do it. Yeah. So we have this new, as you mentioned, this new national platform for networking where people were going on to my local networking group with Eric Lopkin, who's been on the podcast. He's got this great wide-ranging network, and now suddenly it's international. We've had people popping in from Canada because they were all on lockdown. We've had, they're trying to find a new job or trying to find work while they're on lockdown that's remote. We've had people come in from England and all over. I found a great animation guy that was just starting out in Canada. And it's just because he was on Eventbrite and just popped in. He didn't care that it was in Connecticut, whereas we'd never had anybody outside that almost hyper local region before.
Sure.
So huge shift, huge opportunity. So you don't even have to try to go popping into all these network groups you've never been in before. You can stay in the local that have stayed digital. And hopefully all the states will be back to having in-person ones soon. But for those that don't, you still have a resource. You're not stuck not talking to anybody. It's just that you only see them from the shoulders up. That's all.
Yep.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I think there's pros and cons to it. The conversation is different when you're in person because you've got a different sense of body language and that eye contact. You really don't have the official eye contact thing happening. I mean, you can stare at the camera, but then when you're staring at the camera, you're not able to see the face of the person you're talking to.
I know. I'm always like, I look so shifty eyed. I'm like, where am I looking? Who am I looking at? Yeah.
Yep. And you never know what someone's looking at. You've got 20 people on the screen, and because everyone's screen is like different order of where people are sitting.
I love when people say, I'm going to go around on my screen clockwise. And we're like, yeah, I don't know who that is, but okay, let me know when I'm next.
But so, in person, there's definitely value to building that rapport, and there's different connections from just that body language and what's happening from there. But virtually is great because you can reach so much further, as you're talking about, and there's definitely benefits to that. The borders are dropped basically.
Exactly. I love that. That's the perfect summary. The borders are dropped. The boundaries are dropped. There's no reason you can't reach out to people everywhere because everybody knows Zoom now. When I started as a solopreneur freelancer, I learned Zoom because of an agency that hired me, and that's what they used to interview me. And I'd never heard of it. And I was working in a very low tech office previous to that. So I'd never heard of it. And then when COVID came, we literally have no excuse. Everybody knows how to use Zoom. I've had people on my volunteer board of directors who are 75 years old who don't use anything but email, and they've got Zoom down like it's nothing now. Mother of invention is necessity, right? And the other thing that you mentioned, and let me think of what it was now, was the whole, concept of putting yourself out there. You didn't put it exactly like that, but putting yourself out there nationally, and you're going to get new connections, maybe not clients, maybe you don't sell nationally, but maybe you can find salespeople, maybe you can find advocates for your business, people who are enthusiastic about you, having gotten to know you, and they start sending people your way because they're in a parallel industry or, complementary industry. So don't overlook these networking opportunities because there's much more to it besides just selling directly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can never have too many advocates on your side, cheerleaders on the sidelines, praising your name and your expertise and in your offering. And the way you do that is by continuing to network and expand your reach, expand your message, and build those relationships beyond your comfort zone. In all reality, it's stepping outside of your comfort zone. And it's interesting, you're talking about how everyone knows how to use Zoom, but not everyone was comfortable doing this. There was some individuals in my network, local network, who did not like networking on Zoom. And it took them, 6, 7, 8 months to even try it because they did it once. You're like, I don't like that. That's not how I do business. I got to be in person, having, shaking people's hands. I'm like, it doesn't matter if you like it. This is the way it's got to be done now.
Right. Like we're well past the 2 weeks to flatten the curve, guys. Once you're into 6, 8 weeks, you've got to figure out this is going to be happening for a while. And even now, no matter what your particular comfort zone is, a lot of people aren't comfortable. I mean, who would have thought 10 years ago or 3 years ago that we'd be having such a national conversation about what's an appropriate way to greet people in person, because nobody's sure who wants to shake your hand. Maybe they're okay with meeting you and standing 3 feet away, but they don't want to shake your hand because we don't even have the flu right now. Nobody wants to get sick. So, do you wave? Do you do an elbow bump? Do you do a fist bump? And nothing conventional has come out. People have tried to bring us all together on just one, but it's a huge debate in this country. How do you greet people? I prefer elbow bump. So, having that entirely different perspective on meeting in person, you're going to have to go to networking. You're going to have to go to digital to find a way to build that relationship. And again, body language is huge. I have a couple of friends who are therapists, and they gave up their offices during the shutdown because they weren't going to pay rent. for that.
Sure.
And a lot of them have decided not to go back to it, which surprised me because I said, well, if you're going to continue doing telehealth, aren't you losing as therapist a huge piece of business, not being able to see if they're like moving their foot while they're very calm on their face? I mean, that seems to me would be a huge thing. And then it occurred to me that that's how I build relationships with people. I look to see if they're really receptive. Are they giving me the very happy face? Or are they, drumming their fingers in the background because they'd like me to just stop talking, but they're too polite to say, too obliging to say, okay, I'm not interested. Body language is hugely important. So I can see why some people weren't comfortable. Any ideas how we could overcome that? Because I don't have any on networking.
No, it's interesting because when people just want to do a phone call now, I feel like that's super old school. I'm like, let's just get on a Zoom. Like, I want to see you, we're in the Jetson area now.
Yeah, exactly. And you can share a screen instead of trying to describe something. And I have learned that people do not see things the way I describe it because I'm very, very visual. And I think you can see what's in my head. Most people can't. So yeah.
No, I think it's made, the sales conversation better. It's just the visual representation to help illustrate what you're trying to really do as opposed to just verbally communicate. That deepens the conversation for sure. So I don't do much for phone calls. And when I am on a phone call, I also find, this is my own personal preference, I might regret saying this, but I'm going to say it anyways. Like, I prefer the Zoom because I've got the microphone and the headphones, so my hands are free. But when I'm on the phone, I have to hold it. So I'm not able to take my notes as efficiently because my hands are tied up on a phone call holding the phone. I know, otherwise I'm doing speakerphone, and I know people don't like that either. So
and a lot of us have the problem of you put the little earbuds in and they just fall out.
That's why we're the big guys. I don't have little earbuds. I don't understand how anyone keeps those in their ears. Or I just got weird ears. Yeah.
No, ears are like fingerprints. Everybody's is different. They can actually identify you by the swirls. And I have them for my personal phone for when I want to listen to something and there's other people in the room, but you got to sit still. I don't get how people are running with earbuds in. I'm like, don't you lose a lot of Apple Podcasts? Don't you have to pay for a lot of those? So I think that being able to really hear and speak to somebody and be able to focus on what you're doing digitally is great. Even if it's in a group, you have to be present for that. And that's a skill a lot of us have to work on. If you're in a networking group and you're multitasking, you're losing something. You're losing something from the networking because they don't see you as engaged, and you're not showing that you're engaged at all or that you're interested in what they're saying. So you're going to lose opportunities.
Turn your camera on. Yeah. What's the point of getting on the Zoom if you're going to not have your camera on?
Yeah, I'm not going to say I'm never going to do that, but yeah, if you turn your camera off, I'm turning mine off too, because then I just figured you're out. And I know some people just don't like to be on camera because they don't have a good place to sit, or they've got their cat's rear end in the camera, whatever. I don't care about that. Obviously, me and my freaking dogs, but the idea that you have to be perfect on Zoom is actually not true. And you actually can get away with a lot more on networking than you could have if you showed up in person.
Well, I think it goes back to that being authentic. I mean, if anything, it's actually opened the door to become more, I don't know if casual is the right word.
There's no facade. There's not as much facade.
There's if it's lowered expectations or a sense of I'm with you, I understand, it's acceptable, maybe is what I'm trying to say, but it's also opening up the door to be more you. I'm wearing a zip up hoodie today. if this was an in-person interview, I probably would be wearing more like a suit or something. So,
right.
I mean,
and that makes a difference when you're meeting someone. But for podcasting, we know we can get away with it if we're not going to be, showing any of the video. I actually told Lori, I'm only wearing makeup because I have to be somewhere after my second podcast, and I don't have time to put it on. So the idea of networking, getting back to building that relationship and beyond just Zoom, because, eventually we'll be off of Zoom. I don't think it's going away though, guys. I think this is always going to be here for our careers. And yeah, phone calls aren't going to be as popular. They're already not with a lot of demographics. They just look at the phone like, why aren't you texting me? So
yeah, FaceTime, or what is it? Marco Polo is the video chat app, and Snapchat, all those things. Yeah.
Yeah. And we have an opportunity to use that to continue connecting with people far outside of our group, as we said, but we also have an opportunity to use that to then meet people in person. And you've already got an idea of who they are. Going back to the blind date scenario, you email someone and go, okay, let's have a meeting. You can have that preliminary qualifying meeting on Zoom and find out who they are. And you can still get a lot from what they say and how they look, not how they're dressed. Again, that's more acceptable. We all got shoved into a situation where I already had a home office. I already worked remotely, but so many people got shoved into a situation where their kids are home, they're running around, they're jumping in and out of the screen. We've all accepted that life happens. And that's, I think, brought the casual level up a bit. So, because we're all the same, we're all stuck with those situations. But going back to the networking, when you're, how do I want to put this? When you're talking to someone, Zoom, in person, anything, how do you not just say, hey, I'm only connecting with you because I want to sell something? I know you and I know how to do that, but that's a question I get a lot. It's like, well, what do I say to them? What would you suggest people open up with?
If I'm at an event in person, I just ask real basic, like, oh, how did you hear about this event? What other types of events do you go to? Just to try to build rapport. I'm trying to ask questions about them and putting the emphasis on them first, as opposed to, you should hear how awesome I am, because that's gonna be boring. People like to talk about themselves. So give them the opportunity to talk about themselves. And you don't always have to go straight to business. What do you do for fun? What's the last book you read? Who's your favorite sports team? Where are you going to travel to next? There's a million different topics that you can dive into to just try to build rapport. Then if you find something, so everyone in my network, without a doubt, knows that I love hockey. I play hockey. I watch hockey, a huge advocate of hockey. And if I find that I'm talking to someone and they say the word hockey, like, let me tell you, that conversation for the next 20 minutes is going to be about hockey. We are building instant rapport right away. I will forever remember this person likes hockey. And then maybe we talk business, but it might not even happen for, the next time we meet. But we've established rapport. That's more important than I want to sell you some stuff.
Yes. And by the way, I like hockey. You can't use that as the introductory thing to your LinkedIn pitch either, guys. No stealing that. So, hey, I like hockey too. And would you like to buy my investment portfolio? So because that's, so many people might still be in the consideration phase or not even ready to buy from you or not even know anybody to buy from you, but they're going to remember you from that rapport, whether it's about hockey or obnoxious dogs or tennis or, who you both know in the industry or, how'd you come here? Oh, so-and-so brought me. Oh, I've known her for years. And suddenly you've got this whole new thing to talk about, which is the other person nicely. So we have to remember that rapport is the foundation of selling. So if you're thinking, well, I'm there to sell, I'm there to work, I'm there to hustle. I hate the word hustle now, but I'm there to hustle. Yeah. Then remember that hustling is also rapport. Hustling is doing the work, not just going right to the sales pitch. And that's been lost. And I'm not sure if the whole Zoom thing brought it back or if it came back on its own. It's always been there, but the emphasis on digital relationships is so much higher now. so much higher.
But I think you can be faster on your follow through in digital.
Yeah, you can actually drop it in the chat, right?
Yeah. Oh, there's this great book you got to read. I'll send it to you. Oh, here's the link to it on Amazon, or you got to talk to this person, and then you just share their LinkedIn profile, and you can just do a quick, intro email or intro on LinkedIn. And that takes 30 seconds, as opposed to like you're at an in-person event, then you have to make a note to do it, or you stand off to the side and do it real quickly on your own with, being the weirdo in the corner by yourself. But nothing wrong with that. Just saying.
Nothing wrong with that.
Sometimes I do that because I want to make sure that I follow through and actually do it, as opposed to, the latter, which is not doing it. That's worse than being the weirdo in the corner, actually taking a minute to say, I told this guy I was going to send him this book. Here's the link to it. And I've actually gone as far as, if you're talking about like, I want to actually potentially do business with this person, instead of saying, I've got a book recommendation, I'm going to send you the link, I'll just order the book and send it to them.
Wow.
Like here's, I think you'd find this book, and then they're going to remember you. Wow, this person I just met, we talked about mindset, or, whatever there's a million great books out there. But sending it with a little note that just said, hey, great connecting, I thought this book would be good for you, really makes an impact.
It does, especially if it's something you're sending them that they didn't ask for, but is relevant. I mean, you don't want anybody leaving a networking group saying, well, that wasn't productive. If your networking, connection says, well, that could have been an email, that's bad. You want to make sure that you are, sending them valuable information, or just the fact that you're sending them something that was thoughtful, not just that you pulled it randomly out of the air. Like when I worked for a guy in finance once years ago, and it was when the Who Moved My Cheese business book came out, which is like practically a kid's book, and it's a very good message, but it's just
easy read, good book though. Yeah, I agree.
It is a good book. He got 7 copies in 1 week from people trying to connect with him. So don't just send something because you heard that was the trendy book. Like Lori just said, something comes up in your conversation, you send them the specific link, the specific book, or the specific ebook, whatever it is, because then it's really thoughtful. I mean, it's great that people were nice enough to send him books, but he was like throwing them around the office going, anybody want one of these? It kind of loses the impact when it's not something you actually talked about or you actually thought about. And I've just started a new run on that book, I'm sure. So that's a great point, that we need to make sure that it's a productive and valuable meeting, even if it's just having them talk about themselves. And when people get me to do that at network meetings, I walk away going, they got me. I didn't get to ask about that.
Yep. It is a funny game askers. When you have two really good networkers talking to each other, and they're both tackling like, well, I want to learn about you. No, I want to learn about you. It's just this little, okay, I'll give you 10 minutes, and then I'll, you give me 10 minutes. Like,
right. Or that's when you're like, okay, we have to do a one-on-one because we have more to talk about. I've connected with people like that. And for the introverts in the room, they're always like, the extroverts are fighting over there. I'm just going to stand here by this ficus and send my connection link. See, they're doing better. So I find that my biggest questions for people who consider themselves introverts is, I don't want to be nosy and ask them about themselves, but that's really what people want. They want to talk about themselves. You don't, because you're an introvert, but other people do. And that's a really great way to start. And then they just talk and you don't have to come up with questions. See, what a great idea. I'm very sensitive to the introvert thing because I have an extremely introverted daughter who is quite successful, but doesn't want to order in restaurants. So I try to think about when I'm telling these tips about things, how there's always somebody in the corner going, that sounds terrifying. So, it doesn't have to be. It's just take a deep breath and ask somebody a question when you can and let them talk.
Yeah. I've got a couple of tips on that. I'll share real quick if that's okay.
Please do.
So one of my guests that I interviewed, she took the approach of changing it in her head. Like, I'm not here to network. I'm actually here to like do some research, and then I'm going to write an article about this person. So I'm interviewing them for the article I'm writing, as opposed to I'm here to network. So she just like played a game in her head, and
She
changed
reframes it. Yeah.
Yeah, she reframes it. Another one is I'm a huge fan of the buddy system. So, you have your networking buddy, and this is more in-person events, not so much the virtual ones. But go with someone who you trust, who has, who's more of that extrovert mindset. And then you can tag team with them, let them do the initial introduction and warm it up for you. Cause I think oftentimes introverts have this fear of getting the conversation started. But once they're in the conversation, then there's this sense of comfort and this weight is lifted. So just having someone just kind of be your wingman basically.
I was just going to say the wingman or the wingwoman,
yeah,
right? The business wingman. And I've certainly used those. Somebody goes, oh, you got to meet the people that I work with, or you got to meet this client, and they'll bring me along to an event that I was not invited to, but it's okay that I'm there. But again, I'm not going to just walk in by myself. And I think that we all know from this podcast that I'm not an introvert. But I'm also not just going to like cold walk into an event and go, hi, I'm here because I heard about it from so-and-so. So, so-and-so brings me and introduces me around, and then I'm fine. And I think that's a good tactic for anybody, but we call that the wing woman or the wingman.
Sure.
We do it for each other.
Totally. Love it.
And isn't there a wingman in hockey, or is that not the right sport? My brother.
Well, there's a left wing and a right wing.
There you go. I knew there was wings in hockey. I knew it. Yeah.
Or the Red Wings or Detroit.
Or the Red. Well, that's what I was thinking of, but I'm like, okay. I don't think they're all color coordinated. I think it's actually a thing on the players roster. Okay.
Yeah.
So see, and now I have exhausted my knowledge of hockey. I actually love watching hockey. I've never played it. I don't understand
best
it.
Sport, best sport to play.
New Haven Nighthawks. I'm really throwing myself back now. New Haven Nighthawks, man. Loved them when I was a kid. So, do you have anything that you're doing right now that we can talk about to kind of help people get into the networking, or how they can apply some of this to their digital marketing?
Yeah, I guess there's two pieces. One, definitely check out my podcast, Social Capital. Like I said, I interview professionals globally on the topic of networking, and it's really to just understand different perspectives and here's some tips and tactics on how to next level your networking. Second, we have an offering. If you go to keystoneclick.com/profits, this is either an ebook or we will actually put it in the mail. We printed it really nicely bound. It's 42 ways to build brand awareness, generate leads, and nurture those opportunities. And all three of those involve networking.
Absolutely. Awesome. I have been listening to your podcast, and it's really very, very helpful. You get a lot of, it's almost like kind of having the idea of who you're going to meet at these networking groups, and the kinds of things people are thinking when they come in. And it's fascinating. I love listening to it. I'm visualizing it all in my head. So this has been awesome. Anything you want to leave us with? Any ideas that you like to express to people?
I'm going to just reinforce those three rules is, one, be authentic, be genuine, be you, two, give first, and three, follow through. And if you just practice those simple rules, you're going to kill it. You're going to achieve your goals.
I love it. I love that. All right. Well, thank you so much, Lori HIghby from Keystone Click. This has been awesome. Go check out her podcast, Social Capital, and her Keystone Click website, because there's a lot of good information there. And thanks for getting to know us today on this audio networking.
Absolutely. This was great. Thank you so much. I loved being a guest on your show.
Thank you. All right. We'll see you guys around soon next week. Wow, another fantastic conversation done. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Don't forget that all the links mentioned will be in the show notes at lizacivicmarketing.com. And while you're there, if you're a business owner whose marketing is on life support, check out the Your Virtual Marketing Department offer and take the Marketing Health Report quiz for free. For less than the cost of a full-time hire, we can take your marketing from frustrating to lead generating with an entire marketing team. So check that out, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to Marketing Myths and Magic, part of the Xvadio Podcast Network. You can find us at exvadio.com/podcasts, as well as the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and wherever you find podcasts.